The conference room smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Derek sat across from me with his laptop open, wearing that expression I'd seen 1,000 times during our relationship, the one that said he knew better than me about everything. This is incredible, I thought. This is actually happening. He'd been my manager for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of watching him transform from the guy who used to bring me breakfast in bed to someone who CC'd half the company on emails about my minor typos. 3 weeks of public corrections in team meetings. 3 weeks of him reassigning my projects to other people with that tight little smile that never reached his eyes. And now here we were, Friday afternoon, 4:30. He'd scheduled this meeting with the subject line performance review discussion. I was 29 years old. I'd been working at Riverside Marketing for 2 years before Derek even applied for the management position. I was good at my job. Better than good. I'd landed the Hartwell account 6 months ago, our biggest client that year. But ever since Derek became my supervisor, suddenly everything I did was just barely acceptable. He cleared his throat, adjusted his tie. That navy blue one I'd bought him for his birthday last year, back when we were still pretending we had a future together. "So, Emily," he said. His voice had that false patience that made my skin crawl. "I wanted to discuss some concerns about your recent work quality." I folded my hands on the table. Didn't say anything. Just waited. He pulled up a spreadsheet. Started listing things. The Henderson proposal had formatting inconsistencies. The Caldwell presentation was submitted 4 hours before the deadline, instead of a full day ahead. My email response time had increased by an average of 45 minutes over the past 2 weeks. Every single thing he mentioned was technically correct. Also, completely normal. Also exactly the kind of minor details that nobody had ever cared about before he became my boss. I let him talk. Watched him lean back in his chair with that satisfied expression. He was enjoying this. That was the part that really got me. He was genuinely enjoying making me sit here and listen to this. The breakup had been 6 months ago. I'd ended it after realizing that dating Derek meant spending every evening listening to him explain my own feelings to me. He'd taken it badly. Sent me 37 text messages in one night. Showed up at my apartment twice. Called my best friend to ask what he'd done wrong. Then he'd gone quiet. Applied for the senior management position at Riverside. Got it because he interviewed well and had an MBA from a decent school. Suddenly, he was my supervisor, and I was supposed to act like we'd never spent 18 months together. "Are you following me?" he asked. "Because I need to know that you understand the gravity of these performance issues." Performance issues. He said it like I'd been showing up drunk or falsifying reports, like I hadn't just renewed the Hartwell contract for another 2 years last month. "I understand," I said quietly. He nodded, closed his laptop, looked at me with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so obviously satisfaction. "Emily, I'm not trying to be harsh here," he said. "I'm actually trying to help you succeed. But you need to be willing to meet the standards that everyone else on this team is meeting." Everyone else on the team was meeting those standards because Derek wasn't monitoring their every move with a microscope and a stopwatch. Everyone else got to submit proposals without him rewriting entire sections. Everyone else didn't have to sit through 30-minute meetings to discuss 45-minute email delays. But I didn't say any of that, just nodded. Let him think he'd won whatever game he thought we were playing. "I'm going to need to see significant improvement over the next few weeks," he continued. "Because honestly, I'm not sure you're the right fit for this position anymore." There it was. The actual threat, hidden under corporate language and fake concern, but still a threat. My phone was in my pocket. I'd silenced it before the meeting, but I could feel it there. Could feel the weight of everything Derek didn't know. My dad had bought Riverside Marketing 11 days ago. The announcement wasn't public yet. Wouldn't be public until Monday morning. Some complicated thing about stock transfers and regulatory approval. I didn't understand all the details. What I understood was this. Derek had spent 3 weeks making my life miserable. Had scheduled this meeting to tell me I wasn't good enough. Had no idea who he was actually talking to. I should probably explain how we got here. My father is Michael Chen. He owns Chen Capital Group, a private equity firm that specializes in acquiring mid-sized marketing and advertising companies. He's been doing this for 30 years. Started with one small firm in Seattle and built an empire that spans 12 states. I'd never wanted to work for my dad. Never wanted people to think I got opportunities because of his money or his name. So I'd kept my maiden name when I started at Riverside, Emily Patterson, not Emily Chen. Let everyone assume I was just another account manager with a decent work ethic and good instincts. My dad had respected that. Never interfered. Never even mentioned Riverside except to ask how work was going when we had dinner once a month. Then 3 weeks ago, he'd called me. Said he was looking at acquiring a company. Asked if I knew anything about Riverside Marketing's culture and client retention. I told him it was a good company, solid team, strong client relationships, growing steadily. I'd meant it. Even with Derek making my daily life complicated, Riverside was a good place to work. He'd asked if I wanted him to back off. Said he had other options. I'd told him to do what made sense for business, that I could handle whatever happened. Now Derek was looking at me across this conference room table, completely confident that he had all the power in this situation. "Do you have any questions?" he asked. I pulled out my phone, opened my messages, started typing. Derek frowned. "Emily, this is a serious conversation. I need your full attention." I kept typing, sent the message, put my phone face down on the table. "Sorry," I said. "Just needed to send something quickly." My dad would see that text in about 30 seconds. He was probably in his office in downtown Seattle, probably reviewing the final acquisition documents for Monday's announcement. The text said, "Can you call me in about 20 minutes? Derek just told me I'm not meeting performance standards and might not be the right fit for my position." Derek was talking again. Something about development plans and performance improvement timelines. I nodded in the right places, made appropriate eye contact. My phone buzzed, face down on the table, so Derek couldn't see the screen. But I knew what it said. 15 minutes later, Derek's office phone rang, the landline that nobody ever used except for internal calls from the executive suite. He frowned, picked it up. "This is Derek Morrison," he said. I watched his face change. Watched confusion turn to concern, turn to something close to panic. "Yes, sir," he said. "Yes, she's right here. Of course. We can come up right now." He hung up, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Total bewilderment. "That was James Hartwell," he said. "The CEO. He wants to see both of us in his office immediately." I stood up, smoothed my skirt, picked up my phone. The walk to the executive floor was quiet. Derek kept glancing at me like I might explain what was happening. I didn't say anything, just walked. James Hartwell's office took up the entire northeast corner of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. That expensive kind of minimalist furniture that costs more than most people's cars. He was standing by the window when we came in. Turned around, gestured to the chairs facing his desk. "Please sit," he said. Derek sat. I sat. We waited. James walked to his desk. Didn't sit down. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at Derek with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mr. Morrison," he said. "I understand you just had a performance review discussion with Ms. Patterson." Derek nodded, cleared his throat. "Yes, sir. Just routine feedback and development planning." James looked at me. "Emily, would you say that's an accurate characterization of the meeting?" I could have lied. Could have downplayed it. Could have played nice the way I'd been playing nice for 3 weeks. Instead, I told the truth. "He told me my work quality has been declining," I said. "That I'm not meeting the standards other team members are meeting. That he's not sure I'm the right fit for my position anymore." Derek's face went red. "That's not. I was providing constructive feedback about areas for improvement. That's my job as her manager." James nodded slowly, walked around his desk, sat down. "Mr. Morrison, I'm going to share some information with you that isn't public yet," he said. "As of last Friday, Riverside Marketing was acquired by Chen Capital Group. The announcement will go out Monday morning." Derek blinked, looked confused. "I'm not sure I understand what that has to do with..." James gestured at me. "Emily Patterson is actually Emily Chen, Michael Chen's daughter, the owner of the company you work for." I watched Derek's brain try to process that information. Watched him do the math. Watched realization hit him like a freight train. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Now, James continued, his voice pleasant and professional. I've just spent 20 minutes on the phone with Mr. Chen, discussing his daughter's experience at this company over the past 3 weeks. He's very interested in understanding why one of our top account managers, someone who renewed our biggest client contract just last month, is suddenly being told she doesn't meet performance standards. Derek started, then stopped, started again. I didn't know. I was just doing my job. Providing feedback. Were you? James asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you spent 3 weeks micromanaging one specific employee while leaving the rest of your team alone. It looks like you've been CCing executives on minor issues that should be handled privately. It looks like you've been reassigning projects without clear business justification. Those were all based on performance concerns, Derek said. His voice had gone up half an octave. James opened a folder on his desk, started reading. Henderson Proposal, Formatting Inconsistencies. Can you tell me what those inconsistencies were? Derek hesitated. Some spacing issues in the appendix. Did those spacing issues impact the client's ability to review the proposal? No, but Caldwell presentation, submitted 4 hours before deadline instead of a full day ahead. Was the presentation incomplete or substandard? No, it was fine. I just think. Email response time increased by 45 minutes over 2 weeks. James looked up. Are you tracking response times for your entire team or just Ms. Chen? Derek didn't answer. The room was very quiet. I could hear traffic from the street below. Could hear the HVAC system humming. Here's what's going to happen, James said. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned from the senior management position. You'll be returning to your previous role as account manager. Your direct supervisor will be Patricia Wong. Derek went pale. That's a demotion. It's a lateral move back to the position you held before, James said. The position where your performance was actually quite good, where you focused on your own work instead of finding problems with other people's. This is because of her, Derek said. His voice had an edge now. Because she complained to her father. James leaned forward. This is because you spent 3 weeks creating a hostile work environment for an employee who'd done nothing to deserve it. This is because you let personal history interfere with professional judgment. This is because when I called your previous supervisors for references, all of them mentioned that you have excellent individual skills but struggle with managing interpersonal dynamics. He closed the folder. You're a good account manager, Mr. Morrison. You're not ready to be a people manager. Maybe someday you will be, but not now, and not at this company. Derek looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since we'd sat down. I didn't say anything, didn't smile, didn't gloat. Just looked back at him with the same calm expression I'd had in the conference room. You can take the weekend to think about whether you want to stay at Riverside in your new role, James said. Let me know Monday morning. Either way, there won't be any negative references. This isn't personal. It's about putting people in positions where they can succeed. Derek stood up, walked to the door, stopped, turned back to look at me one more time. I wanted to say something profound, something that would make him understand everything he'd misunderstood about me, about us, about what had just happened. Instead, I just said, "Have a good weekend, Derek." He left. James waited until the door closed. Then he let out a long breath. Your father is very protective of you, he said, but also very clear that you earned your position here on merit. He sent me your performance reviews from the past 2 years. You're one of our strongest account managers. I didn't ask him to buy the company, I said quietly. James smiled. I know. He told me. He also told me that if you weren't working here, he probably wouldn't have looked at Riverside in the first place. Said your judgment about company culture is better than most of the consultants he pays 6 figures to evaluate acquisitions. That weekend, I didn't hear from Derek. Didn't really expect to. Monday morning, the acquisition announcement went out. Company-wide email from James, followed by a video call introduction to my father. Professional. Warm. No mention of family relationships. Patricia Wong sent me a message around 10 a.m. Derek Morrison resigned this morning, effective immediately. Cleaned out his desk before most people got in. I wasn't surprised. The guy who'd spent our entire relationship explaining things to me, who'd become my manager and immediately started finding fault with everything I did, who'd scheduled a meeting to tell me I wasn't good enough. That guy wasn't going to stick around and be managed by someone else, wasn't going to accept that he'd been wrong. 3 days later, I got a text from his number. One line. "You could have told me." I stared at that message for a long time, thought about all the things I could say, about how he could have treated me with basic professional respect, about how he could have managed me the same way he managed everyone else, about how none of this would have happened if he'd just let the personal history stay in the past where it belonged. Instead, I wrote back, "You could have been a decent manager." Then I blocked his number. 2 months after that, I got promoted. Not because of my dad. Because the Hartwell contract renewal I'd negotiated included an expansion clause that brought in $300,000 in additional revenue. Because I'd been doing excellent work the whole time, even while Derek was trying to convince everyone otherwise. Patricia pulled me into her office the day the promotion was announced. Asked me straight out if I felt uncomfortable being evaluated by people who knew about my family connection. I told her the truth, that I'd rather be judged on my actual work than on assumptions about my competence. That the past 2 months had been better than the previous 3 weeks precisely because people were treating me normally. She nodded, said that made sense, then said something I didn't expect. "You know, Morrison wasn't a bad account manager before he got promoted. Actually, pretty solid. But the second he got that management position, he changed. Started micromanaging. Started finding problems that didn't exist." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "I think he didn't know how to lead, so he tried to control instead." I thought about that a lot over the next few weeks. About how Derek had been good at his job until he got a different job. About how being good at one thing doesn't automatically make you good at the next thing. About how people who feel insecure often try to make others feel smaller. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Derek was working at a smaller firm across town, account manager position. Doing well, apparently. No management responsibilities. Good for him, I thought. Genuinely. I hoped he'd figured some things out. Hoped he'd learned something from how spectacularly his attempt at managing me had backfired. But I also hoped he remembered the conference room. The performance review that wasn't really about performance. The moment when he thought he had all the power, and then realized he'd never had any at all. Today, I'm the Director of Client Relations at Riverside Marketing. I manage a team of 8 account managers. When I hire people, I look for competence and kindness in equal measure. When I give feedback, I make sure it's specific, fair, and focused on actual performance issues. And when someone's personal feelings start interfering with their professional judgment, I have a very clear conversation about boundaries and expectations. Because I remember what it feels like to be on the other side of that dynamic. Remember sitting in a conference room listening to someone list minor issues and act like they were major problems. My dad and I still have dinner once a month. He never brings up the Derek situation unless I do. Never treats me differently than he did before the acquisition. Still respects that I wanted to build my career on my own terms. But once, about a year after everything happened, he asked me if I regretted sending that text from the conference room. I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I told him. Because Derek needed to learn that you can't treat people badly just because you think they don't have any power. You can't use your position to settle personal scores. You can't let your ego write checks your competence can't cash. My dad laughed at that last part. Said I sounded like him. Maybe I did. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The thing nobody tells you about power is that it's not really about who owns the company or who has the fancy title. It's about knowing your own worth. It's about refusing to let someone else's insecurity become your problem. Derek thought he had power because he was my manager. Thought he could make me doubt myself. Thought 3 weeks of micromanagement and manufactured concerns would break me down. What he didn't understand was that I'd never needed his approval. Never needed him to tell me I was good at my job. I'd already known. And when he tried to use his position to make me feel small, all he really did was show everyone exactly who he was. So, yeah, I sent that text to my dad. And yeah, Derek lost his management position. And yeah, I got to watch him realize that the person he'd been condescending to for 3 weeks was actually someone he should have been treating with basic professional respect all along. Some people would call that revenge. I call it natural consequences. You want to know the real lesson here? It's not about having a rich father who can buy companies. It's not about secret identities or dramatic reveals in corner offices. It's simpler than that. Treat people well, not because of who they might turn out to be, not because of what they might be able to do to you, but because that's how you should treat people, period. Derek didn't lose his job because I was the owner's daughter. He lost it because he let personal feelings override professional judgment, because he created a hostile environment, because he thought his title gave him permission to be petty, and in the end, that would have caught up with him eventually. Whether my dad bought the company or not, whether I texted him from that conference room or not, I just happened to speed up the timeline. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd told Derek who I was from the beginning. If I'd walked into his office that first week and said, "Hey, by the way, my dad just bought this place." Would he have treated me differently? Probably. Would that have been better? No, because then I never would have known who he really was. Never would have seen what he did when he thought he had power over me. Never would have learned that the guy I'd dated for 18 months had a mean streak I'd somehow missed. The conference room moment, the text message, the phone call, the meeting in James Hartwell's office, Derek's face when he realized what he'd done. All of it happened exactly the way it needed to happen. And now, when I'm interviewing someone for a management position, I pay very close attention to how they talk about the people they'd be supervising. Listen for signs of respect versus control. Look for evidence that they understand the difference between managing and micromanaging, because I remember Derek. Remember the navy blue tie, and the fake patience and the satisfaction in his voice when he told me I wasn't meeting standards. And I make damn sure that nobody on my team ever has to sit through a meeting like that. Not on my watch.